Good evening, viewers. So we're here again another month, another Ask Why program. This is the program, the monthly program from CCSJ, the Catholic Commission for Social Justice, on which we discuss social justice issues. And this evening we have an amazing topic, youth and social justice. As we know, quite often we adults, those of us who are adults, really forget that we need to listen a bit more to our young people. So we're here this evening to listen and to share our perspective on the whole issue of youth and social justice. And to help us do that, we've got a wonderful panel. And so to my left, we'll start with Stephanie. Stephanie, can you introduce yourself to viewers?
Hi, my name is Stephanie Bell, and the youth leader priority 3 for the Maloney Parish. I gravitated to that position because I realized that there's a lot needed to be done with youths in directing them along the right path. And so far, I see my position as something that is necessary in today's society.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie. Diane, and you say the church, name of the church in that.
Good night, everyone. My name is Diane Wells. We're from the Maloney Church of the Incarnation out in Dabadie, and we are very happy to be with you this afternoon again to bring the voice of youth, a voice that is not always taken into consideration when we do that equation. So we're hoping that out of this program we will have a sense really of what and how youth are affected by the decisions we make.
Yes. And of course, Diane, as you know, is our newly appointed parish link coordinator for the suburban and central and suburban vicariates. Welcome, Diane. Ryan.
Hi, good day, everyone. I'm Rodney Mulligan. Part of Maloney Parish also. Also part of the youth congregation also. I joined because I feel that I could probably make an impact on someone else's life, also make changes in my life, and maybe be a role model to somebody also.
Thank you. Thank you. Welcome, Rodney. Rodney Ryan Mulligan.
Yes, we all keep
yes.
for that.
And he's known by Rodney or Ryan. Okay. Nadine, of course, our co-presenter, Nadine.
Yes, I am Nadine Bushell, member of the Catholic Commission for Social Justice.
Thank you. Thanks for coming on, Nadine. So we're going to have a break now for some quotations. Really listen, read the quotations as they come on because they're really important. It takes a while to choose appropriate ones for the theme.
Let no one despise your youth, but set the believers an example in speech and conduct, in love, in faith, in purity. Dear young friends, let me urge you to strengthen this faith which has been handed down to us from the time of the apostles. Make Christ, the Son of God, the center of your life. Growing in friendship with Christ necessarily means recognizing the importance of joyful participation in the life of your parishes, communities, and movements, as well as the celebration of Sunday Mass, frequent reception of the sacrament of reconciliation, and the cultivation of personal prayer and meditation on God's Word. Friendship with Jesus will also lead you to bear witness to the faith wherever you are. So do not keep Christ to yourselves. Share with others the joy of your faith. The world needs the witness of your faith. It surely needs God. Remaining steadfast in the journey of faith with firm hope in the Lord is the secret of our journey. There are no difficulties, trials, or misunderstandings to fear, provided we remain united to God as branches to the vine, provided we do not lose our friendship with Him, provided we make ever more room for Him in our lives.
Yes, we must remain united as branches to the vine. if we do that, we know that we will be true witnesses to Christ. So let's share now. I want you all to share with us, from your perspective as two youths in our archdiocese, what are some of the issues that you think affect our youth positively and negatively, and that we on CCSJ and the archdiocese as a whole should be addressing? Stephanie.
First to begin, I think some of the positive things that could be a negative if you use it the wrong way would be technology. Technology is a very interesting thing. It helps, it's very helpful, but if used the wrong way, it could be negative in the sense that we have all these social networks now. We have Facebook, we have Twitter, we have BBM, we have WhatsApp messaging, the list goes on. But then at the end of the day is, what are the conversations? What is being passed on from youth to youth, and what guides us into making certain decisions based on what is being discussed among each other. And it's very easy to see negative things as being good, because as far as I know, now in society, everything is good and everything is right. No one has boundaries no more. Everyone just decides to do their own thing because it's good for them at the point in time without thinking about the consequences.
Yes, moral relativism. Is
Yeah.
that and you want to share on moral relativism?
More so than the moral relativism, as Stephanie was talking, I found it was so coincidental that the fact that you have all of this methods of communication, but yet one thing I find when the youth come together is that they communicate less.
Yeah.
In spite of the fact that they have all that technology. And I remember being in a class during the week, and we had a couple young people, and I had to ask, if I text you the question, would you then answer me? Because it seems as though they're losing the ability
Yeah.
To communicate.
to communicate orally.
I call it you're socially retarded now, because people are so accustomed to talking behind a phone,
just
talking behind a
texting,
screen,
yes.
that when you can talk for someone for hours, and then when you see them face to face, it's like, hi, okay, what's
Yeah.
next? It's
Yeah,
like,
monosyllabic conversation.
Yes.
Yes.
The technology provides a safe environment for persons to communicate. You don't have to show emotion or show how you really feel. I remember
Yeah.
a young man told me that once. He said, probably send that to you on a, I never told you that, and I would have sent it by a text message. Quite didn't want to tell you that to yourself. So I think it provides a safe environment. People really do not deal with the real issues. They just surface value.
Yes, Rodney?
Well, technology have a good and it have a bad. Yeah, it's easier to talk, message somebody, but also is a breakdown in communication. Also, it preventing you from socializing with your peers.
Yes.
You know, to have views about certain things, or maybe even expressing how you really feel about you know, about someone else. Yeah.
Yeah, and not only prevent you from communicating with your peers, but also with your family.
With your family.
I've seen families, even in my own family, the little great-grands in our family, and every man Jack has a little iPad or something. They're sitting around, they all
But they-
eating in the living, but
But
nobody
they all
talks to each
texting.
other.
They're all
Yeah.
texting.
Yes, yes. What about your education? You know, so often we hear young people come through an education system, and you have views about how you feel education or system, is it good, is it bad, what can be done, and particularly for our Catholic schools, what are your views on education, the education system in Trinidad and Tobago as young people?
to me, I think to a certain extent, the education system kind of limits the innovative minds of some of the youths. Because being a recent graduate of the University of the West Indies, we are bombarded by so many articles you need to read, like articles upon articles for courses, and it's after the course and the next course comes on, and then you have articles to read again, and it leaves no room for thinking.
Right.
It's like you need to just read, soak it up, and then let it out.
Regurgitate it.
And that kind of cuts the ability of a person to come out and think and to come up with new issues or deal with new issues that are arising and facing us. So
That's important, because
Yeah.
we live in a society where, in a world in which you have to think creatively.
Critical
to
thinking.
critical
and I
thinking
think that's
is
what
important.
our society is missing
Yes,
right now.
and Archbishop Harris has been saying that.
Yes.
We don't have philosophy as part of our curriculum, we
yes,
don't
no,
have critical
no.
thinking, and if it continues to be chalk and talk, we're going nowhere fast. Rodney?
Well, the education system, I will say it have a breakdown. Everyone might not be moving at the same pace, or their mind might not be at the same pace. Let's say
You're saying that the schools don't meet the needs of, they don't differentiate.
They don't
Differentiated learning is a big
Yes.
thing in
Special
education.
ed.
Meeting the
Yes,
needs of
it's-
each person,
yes,
each child.
they
taking
don't
the
go individually
Yes.
to each student, and
Yes.
it's more like a run through
Right.
with a session.
And if you get left behind, too bad for
Too
you.
bad for
Lump
you.
everybody together.
That's it.
I remember I had a cousin who told me once, he said the education system in Trinidad is for persons who are average,
Average,
or
yes.
above average. If you are
Average,
not
yeah.
average, then you will suffer in the education system. Although now I think to some extent, with the advent of say, the new university UTT, I think the education system has now opened itself up to a number of other fields. Because what I found happened before was that if you did not focus on academia and like the standard subjects like economics, engineering,
or
IT,
sciences,
those
yeah.
things, you'd have had a problem.
Yeah.
But talents, say for instance, persons who enter culinary arts, normal arts, painting, drama, there are now opportunities that would give those persons a chance. Let's say about 10 to 15 years ago, persons who had skills in those areas, they had no avenue, like you did that on the side, that was a hobby. It did not provide the education system did not provide an opportunity for you. That is the gift that God gave you. And even adults, parents as well, if you told your parents that you
yes.
wanted to do hairdressing. I remember, I'll be honest, I always had an interest in hairdressing. And like, I was in school, I was above average, so I did well academically. And then I told my father that I wanted to, after I finished university, I wanted to go and do a hairdressing course. He said,
like,
what?
no.
You don't need to do that. And I didn't do it because I figured, well, it's a hobby
Spend all
on the
that
side,
money to send you
know?
to school to be a hairdresser. Yeah.
Well, again, that's part of the culture of
Yes.
pushing children into certain
Yeah.
boxes.
Stereotypes,
But
yeah.
Yes.
that being said, although there are avenues now for you to study things that is not academic, like probably drama or art, there is still, after you do that, then where you go,
Yeah.
where you go from there, because you have all this talent and you have all this knowledge about what you're doing, and then where do you go from there?
But do you think it has to do with the size of our society to some extent? That perhaps the opportunities, like in a bigger society, you have more opportunity to develop those skills or to make a living out of the skill, but because the population size is small. I don't know if that
think
perhaps
it
might be
more has to do with probably the social need, if I may say, because things like art is more like a niche market.
Yeah.
It isn't that broad, so people are not like, oh, you have an art gallery, you have an art showing, and you see like 2 people show up.
Yeah.
Like, oh wow.
To make a living off of it.
How can you make a living off of art?
But you link this to employment, which is really important, an important issue for young people around the world. I went to the World Congress Against the Death Penalty in Madrid, and about 50% of young people in Spain now are unemployed. In fact, children who have no work, their parents have no work, all of them living with their grandparents on the pension of the grandparents. And, you know, although we're fortunate we don't have such high levels of unemployment, we do have underemployment as well as unemployment here in Trinidad and Tobago, affecting our young people. And many of our young people are homeless. More and more young people are homeless. How do you think we should be addressing those issues at a national level if we talk about good governance, using the resources of the nation for our young people? What are some of the things we could be doing?
Well, I think the government personally should imply more youth groups, more camps more educational systems in place for the young people to be more aware of situations going around in the country.
When we speak about unemployment and underemployment, I think that's where innovation comes into place,
yes.
and the negative side of technology, because technology has kind of made a lot of things obsolete. You wouldn't find the need to have so many people working for you anymore, because all right, we could have a computer do it now, so why hire so many people to do it? And then now you have people who, because education is at our fingertips now, you could go do a degree in anything right about now, but then when you finish, what do you turn to?
Yeah.
So then you have a degree, yes, but then you need to make a living, so then you end up in some job that doesn't fit what you want to do. Personally, that's affecting me right now. And you just do it because you need to get by, and that's one of the major problems facing youths now.
I think one of the things that I've noticed as well, doing community training across Trinidad and Tobago, is that we're not developing a cadre of young people who think entrepreneurship, who think that they can create their futures, who instead of seeing challenges create opportunities. And that is part of the critical thinking that I think saddens me the most, because we're not in that culture.
That's the problem of the educational system now, is that
risk is not something that they
no,
encourage.
they don't encourage
The banks
risk,
don't
they don't
encourage you.
thinking, they don't
know,
encourage anything right now.
Unless you're born into it.
Yeah.
The banks are not, very supportive of entrepreneurs because of the
no,
fact that
they're not.
the statistics say that necessity entrepreneurs fail in the first year. But, it's time with all the innovation
get
and
the touch,
technology and the support to make a difference.
Part of empowering our young
Yes,
people, Nadine.
yes.
And I think it's our education system as well that does not encourage persons in entrepreneurship.
Yes.
They don't encourage the person projects in school. Like say, to encourage persons to projects in school. You encourage like a class to do an assignment that they would make money out of it, so they don't develop that skill. I wanted to go back to the issue of technology. We have been speaking about it, and we have so far spoken about it in the way that it has hampered, although it has hampered our communication with each other. But the Pope in his message, he spoke about technology and the dangers of technology. His message to the young persons for World Youth Day. He spoke about it, and he talked about the dangers of the technology. However, we have to understand that technology is here to stay.
That's right.
And the truth is, I have personally found that the technology has been helpful in my life.
Yes.
In terms of, because he spoke about in his message to the young persons as well, gather all nations. And he didn't speak about it in terms of country to country, but he spoke about like within your family, within your community, within your church, your schools, your workplace. And then in terms of the village that we live in, like I know that I have used technology to connect with friends who I went to school with many years ago within Trinidad and even out of Trinidad. Also, when we have important events that we want to share, like among the family members and persons who weren't there, we use the technology to do that. And in terms of what the Pope spoke about in his World Youth Day message, in terms of us, he spoke about us going forth, he spoke about us gathering nations and being disciples. And we can use the technology to bombard, like we could become disciples by using technology. Sometimes friends send to you via email inspirational thoughts. We could share some of our personal stories, but we prefer to go on things like Facebook and Twitter and respond to like things that are happening in society in terms of gossip, as opposed to using the opportunity. And the thing is, young persons, that is the tool that they know. So we can use that to promote social justice, promote issues that affect young persons.
I want to just, since you were talking about World Youth Day, I just want to bring that in, because as we know, every 2 or 3 years we have a World Youth Day, and 2013, June the 23rd to the 28th is World Youth Day. The last one was in Madrid, and this one is in Rio. And Pope Francis, it will be his first international trip. And the theme he chose was "Go and make disciples of all nations" from Matthew 28:19. And as you rightly said, to make disciples of young nation of all nations, we have to use modern technology to do that as well. And who better to do that than our young people, because they know, listener, they know things that we only. I went to conference in Madrid, and all the papers that were sent to me were in Spanish, and so, oh my gosh, I have to do a review of two of
could
these
translate.
papers. What to do? My little 8-year-old grade niece in London, she said, Auntie Leela, you haven't heard of Google Translate? You know,
You copy the entire thing.
yeah, so we have to
English.
use, but the World Youth Day is an amazing experience for young people. 40,000 young people were expected in Rio this year for World Youth Day. It's such a wonderful opportunity in terms of social justice to give young people a voice. That's part of the problems with society and us too. How many of our parishes really create opportunities for our young people to have a voice? Share with me, does your parish have opportunities, or parishes you know, for young people to be in leadership decision-making positions? Any of our young people on parish councils, for instance? What's your experience, Stephanie?
I am a part of the council, so like I'll attend council meetings
Excellent.
with Diane, and
That's wonderful.
yeah, I think out of the entire panel, there are probably 3 or 4 youths.
Out of 14.
Yeah,
It's not a bad
well,
grade.
it's not that bad.
And
It's not
the
that
youth
bad.
mass that Stephanie
And-
has started, a youth mass.
A youth mass,
once a
excellent
month.
idea
to
for other
encourage
parishes
youths
to
to come out and
learn
learn to
from.
pray and know more about God, because a lot of youths, they don't know how to pray.
Right.
And we encourage them to come out and come up and like probably say the readings and do the prayers, and even let them select the songs that they want to sing during the mass, and that kind of push them forward to having a voice and speaking up and wanting to do things. So it's all about the pushing.
Rodney, you're part of that too?
Yeah, I'm part of that.
Very
too,
good.
yeah.
And you see it as something positive.
Yeah, something positive is also helping the youths to be more confident in themselves, you know.
Good.
to-
Self-reliance,
yeah.
boost your self-esteem.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very
Give
good.
them that voice.
Because it's interesting, the topic, the points that they raise, because I want to refer back again to the Pope's message for World Youth Day, when he spoke about becoming Christ's disciples, and like a youth mass is an excellent way to encourage persons to come disciples. And what he said, for you to become disciples, you have to understand, you have to forget some of your problems and understand that despite your problems, once you hold on to God and you have prayer as part of your life, you can cope with many things, and that gives you the hope. And he also speaks about going forth, and he says you cannot go forth on your own, you have to go forth with me. So when you encourage young persons to develop that sense of communicating with God and understanding themselves and understanding the role that God has in their lives, that they're not afraid, even if you make mistakes, because he said he always reminded young persons that despite your shortcomings, that you are chosen by him, you are his child, and he's very patient and he will wait. But that is not to deter you, despite what problems you are having, from going forth and becoming disciples. And he also speaks about creating disciples. So even though you are being a disciple, you can use the same technology to get other disciples. And he said, it's difficult to encourage other young persons, but he's saying with me, and you go forth and you understand that I am your strength and your source, you would be able to do it. So I found that it's interesting that the youth mass and encouraging young persons to get that sense of prayer and self was highlighted.
That's important, because as we move forward from confirmation, quite often there's nothing for our young people. And youth masses, long time we used to have the CYO, the Catholic Youth Organization. And so youth masses is one way to get young people out, to get them together, to pray together. The power of prayer, we underestimate the power of prayer, because in every youngster's life, as in all our life, there are issues that affect them. And it's one way to stand in solidarity with each other. Those are justice issues. How do we stand in solidarity with each other in our parishes? A youth mass is an excellent example, and Stephanie, I hope you'll spread the word so that other parishes will adopt that attitude, that we reach out to our young people. Let's break now for a filler, and we come back to continue the discussion.
Christ invites us, come to me, be my friends. Christ, he sends us, go, be missionary.
Giovani, al termine dell'anno santo, affido a voi il segno stesso di quest'anno giubilare, la croce di Cristo, portatela nel mondo come segno dell'amore del Signore Gesù per l'umanità e annunciata a tutti che solo in Cristo, morto e risorto, c'è salvezza e redenzione.
We hear you as you say, go make disciples of all nations, a new people in unity, bring their hearts to me.
Voi non vi rassegnerete ad un mondo in cui altri esseri umani muoiono di fame, restano analfabeti, mancano di lavoro. Voi difenderete la vita in ogni momento del suo sviluppo terreno. Vi sforzerete con ogni vostra energia di rendere questa terra sempre più abitabile per tutti.
Proclaiming your gospel, lives are changed, we're not the same, a new creation, the old has gone, we know a new world will come. Christ invites us, come to me, be my friends. Christ, he sends us, go, be missionaries.
Wonderful clips there. You know, as we're listening to the Holy Father, you know, what's coming across is, here is our Father on earth, a successor of Peter. And we have our Father walking around with us because God is with us all the time. And our young people, we need to empower them to hold on to their faith.
Exactly.
This is the year of faith that the Pope has declared, Pope Emeritus Benedict. And during the year of faith, we're supposed to be deepening our faith. One of the things I wanted to share with viewers is I want you to go on CCSJ's website. Just Google CCSJ Trinidad and you'll access our latest newsletter. It's a summary of Pope Francis's his first encyclical, Lumen Fidei, the Light of Faith. And really, it's an excellent, it's a bit hard going, but we've done a summary, the official summary that will help you. So go on that, and this is a wonderful photo, because remember, it's the first time in 600 years we have two popes who are alive. And I think it was so humble of the two of them to share the one bench. I want to go on now to focus on some of the challenges we face as youngsters and adults to help and reach out in solidarity to those who are experiencing difficulty. I got a clip in that says Jamaica tackles child abductions. I wasn't aware that every day 4 children disappear in Jamaica, every single day. They have 1,154 children at the end of June missing. Now, in Trinidad and Tobago, we have a lot of missing adults and children, and nobody seems to care. They know statistics. I find it interesting, Jamaica is they're setting up electronic billboards across the island with photographs and information of missing children. When we have a duty, who is our neighbor? Only recently the reading in church was, who is, the Good Samaritan. Who is our neighbor? Do we really care that so many of our children, there's a case of a man now charged with having sex with 2 10-year-olds. There's so much incest, there's so many issues affecting our young children. We haven't got a children's authority that's really up and running effectively. But parishes must be hives of activity for justice.
Fill the gap.
Share with me what you think parishes could do to reach out to families who are in need, families who are suffering, parents, lots of young children are having children. They need parenting programs. Our Family Life Commission have common sense parenting. But we need family people to reach out in our parishes to those who are in need. Diane, do you have any stories to share?
As you said there, I'm thinking, coming out of the whole Good Samaritan, we've been doing a series of teaching on faith.
Good.
Coming out of that, faith in action, faith in the midst of trials, faith in the midst of tribulation. And tomorrow we're doing listening as an aspect of faith. And how do we listen to those persons who are our quote-unquote neighbor?
Yes.
We sit next to people in church, but we don't listen to their pain because we don't know their pain. We don't know what their pain is. We don't know what their lives are about because we don't take time to listen to them. You know, we live in such insulated worlds now that we don't know. We don't know if the person next to us is suicidal, if she was abused this morning, if she had nothing to eat today, you know, and we're not expressing faith as listening. Faith in action, where listening is a key component of that. Not only are we not listening to the person next to us, we're not listening to what our youth has to tell us. We're not listening to how they feel ostracized, how they feel misguided, how they feel by the double standards so very often that we set as adults. And as Stephanie talked about, the fact that everything is open and available and you need to tolerate everybody. How do we give them parameters whereby they can find themselves and choose a moral route to walk when we're not listening to what they have to say?
Rodney, you know, one of the things everybody is aware of is that we have a crisis of our males in society. Tell us, share the story. What helped you? Who was your role model or role models? What helped you to stay on the straight and narrow?
Well, my dad helped me to...
Your dad was in your life?
Yeah, my dad was in my life.
Is in your life.
Is in my life.
Excellent.
My dad was an excellent role model to me. He showed me morals, values, and what to do and what not to do. And also helped me to have a spiritual background. My both parents, I should say.
I was just going to say,
My
your mom was there.
My mom and my dad.
Yeah,
My mom and my dad to
excellent.
have a spiritual background and knowing that, to tell me that I'm not alone in society and I have someone I could rely on and I could depend on.
Right.
Yeah.
And they made you feel that you can go to them if you have any problems?
Yeah. They
Excellent.
was open with me.
Right.
Yeah.
Nadine, you wanted to come in?
I was just wondering if you think that males generally, you have had a good experience in terms of the support from you spoke about the support of your parents, but do you think it is fair to say generally that males are perhaps more vulnerable in Trinidad society, that the young male is more vulnerable than the young female? I would like to get your perspective on that as a young male, or do you think that perhaps people are necessarily stereotyping the young male because there will be 1,000 males in Trinidad and only 50 are off, the other 950 are okay. But the whole group gets stereotyped because of those 50 bad apples.
Well, males, well, they are vulnerable. Let me say, like, friends, they probably been peer pressure. Peer pressure is a big issue with youth today. Like, if you have a group of friends and they will pressure you and be like, why you don't do that, boy, why you do that? And, you know, in your mind you'll be thinking that you have to prove a point to these men, you know, and it will lead you to do the wrong thing. And then it wouldn't be just the group of fellas, it will be you and the group of fellas enemies.
Yes. So in fact, your faith comes in here.
Yeah.
If you have a strong faith, you will not fall prey to that. So, you know, but the reality is that many of our young males and females are growing up in homes. We're not dissing single parent homes. We're saying that that's the reality. And so parishes have to fill the gap. And we need more role models, both male and female. We adults have to model the kind of behavior we want our young people to adopt. But while we're talking about, you know, the problems of our youths here, let's also think, you know, that the church is universal. We have to think locally but act globally too.
Yes.
There's you know, so many child soldiers, so many children living in poverty right there. Look at Haiti and places like that, eating
Brazil,
mud pies.
Mexico.
There's so much poverty
Mexico.
around the world. Mexico, yes, all over.
2014, I think they want to do a trip to Mexico.
Right.
The church wants to do a trip because of the poverty.
So much poverty.
Children poverty,
Yes,
yes.
child poverty
Yes.
right here in Trinidad is a big issue.
I think
So share your perspective on that.
Poverty is one of the major issues when you talk about circumstances such as incest, because I spoke to someone, a little lady, we would have conversations, and she said she has family in Tobago where the mother knows that the uncle is with her daughter and she's okay with it because he helps out. And instead of saying, okay, that's wrong, and you try to push it, you get him away from your family because your interest should be
The safety of
the
the
safety
child.
of your child. And there are lots of circumstances like that where people seem they have need for someone for help.
Survival.
And
It's all about survival.
it's all about survival, and you say, all right, we would sacrifice this one for the need of everybody else. And it's morally wrong, but to them, it's we are surviving, we need to survive.
And that's the problem
How do you
when we
help
don't
that
have when we don't have structures
in
that
place.
support structures.
To one,
that-
report it or do something about it.
Yes, and reporting is one thing. What happens if
After.
we report? What happens after?
What happens
supporting
after?
systems do we have
Yeah.
in place? Yeah,
But not just for the support. We have to look at the statistics that says that by 7, a child would have set her preferences, his or her preferences. And if you look at the statistics of children who've been abused,
Yeah.
by 7 they have developed a sexual preference. That is the response, that is the stimuli that they've learned to respond to. So at 7 they've already have a lifetime ahead of them that's defined. And unless you can find proper help and a proper environment to bring them out of it, it remains latent.
Yeah, but
And as
then-
soon as they turn into early teenage, it's what they go back to. It's their normal.
and it really reflects on whether in fact we're doing what Pope Benedict, Emeritus Benedict has said, that we must promote integral human development of every dimension of a person, or
and
every person. No
person.
person should be left behind, and so
Yes.
many of our children, so many of our youths are being left behind. And this is where we come in terms of good governance. Are we supposed as Catholics to walk with the 2 feet of Christian
Yes,
service?
yes.
Works of mercy.
And
You know, I
social
saw a
justice,
YouTube
yeah.
on my nephew's Facebook, and I played with. Wonderful. 2 young people started this trend around the world. I don't know if you all have seen it. They say, why are we planking and twerking? I don't even know the terminology. Why can't we as young people do something positive? And these 2 youths
Oh,
put
yeah.
out a challenge
Heard about it.
for people to make a homeless person smile around the world.
Yeah, you
And
need to do
the
something
the
positive
video
and
shows
put it
how
out.
young people around the world are doing good things. Now they're only giving charity. That's one foot of
As
justice.
opposed to the social.
Yes, so we
justice,
need
Right.
youths also to be advocates as well. But I thought, well, wonderful. Look how new technology, modern technology can be used
Right,
in no time at all.
beneficially,
That
all about
trend
the use.
has
It's
gone
all
around
about
the world.
Viral, you say?
Yeah.
Viral, as they say. Amazing, and it really touched me. And so my nephews put it on his Facebook and said, we want everybody now. And in no time,
Yes.
everybody's liking. You have to
Yes.
learn this
Yeah.
terminology.
You like
press
it,
that, and you're going to do
and
something.
You do your thing and then you put it up.
Yeah.
as well.
So we have to reach out to, and then parenting. How do we support our youths? Teenage pregnancy is a real issue. Mary Care is part of CCSG's responsibility. That's the home opened
Yes.
in 1980 by Archbishop Pantin for young pregnant women. And many of our youngsters are going through that. Pro-life is pro-all life.
Yes, yes.
For all life, and so we have to help our young women who are pregnant to have their babies as well. Are those issues that's coming up in your parishes?
Well,
It's just, I think those are issues that people will hardly bring to the forefront. You know, the issues with child molestation and respect for the life of the child. And you spoke about earlier, you said, you made a comment about children being left behind. But to me, sometimes it's even worse than children being left behind. It's like children actually being used as a tool for economic advancement. You have the old history of like incest because persons are the family members assisting the family. And you also have the issue of human trafficking where you actually use children. And I think what happens, people don't see the value of youth and children, and they're not seeing the link between inculcating good values in children and getting children who are developing children who are well adjusted and the future role that they play in the society next 50 years or so. So like the Pope also spoke as not 1 Timothy chapter, one of the quotes we had, 1 Timothy verse 4 said, let no one despise your youth. And I think to some extent the society does not value the contribution that youth and children can make. Because I know like some persons, many people will tell you that say if they got pregnant before they were married, that their family was upset with them, couldn't stand them, didn't want to speak to them. But as soon as that baby is born, the joy and the love that that baby brings to the home,
yes.
that people forgot the circumstances that the baby was born. I even had a friend who told me that her husband, not her husband, it was her boyfriend, his parents were almost separated. And the birth of the grandchild and the child having to stay at home with them actually brought them together, brought them back together. So the power of young people and the power of children, I don't think we value what they have to offer.
Right.
And as you said earlier, we so often only think about the negative things. Yes, we have gangs and their gang members here. Lots of youth, substance abuse is a problem, or alcoholism is part of that. But we also have youngsters who are doing exceedingly well, and so we need to big them up too. I saw this child, a girl called Nifemi Alonje, 17-year-old, who won a young blogging contest, and the theme of the contest was, what is the biggest issue facing young people today? And she says she believes it's trust in our government, trust in our public services, and trust in society. She said we're constantly being put down as youths, not only by our peers but also the media. We're the scapegoats for any negative activity that takes place. It could even be said that modern society classes young people as second rate. We are persecuted, patronized, and put aside. And so young people are standing up for themselves. Not long ago, remember in Victorian time, a child is seen and not heard. No, nowadays they're speaking out for themselves, and that is good because it will help empower them to work with adults, to create, it's something that is at the end of the prayer for World Youth Day this year, to go out and be catalysts of a new world. That's what the Pope is asking young people. And yet we still have so many youngsters at risk. You would have remembered with the Ryan report, No Time to Quit, Youth at Risk report, where Professor Selwyn Ryan and others, we had an Ask Why program on that. When you see how many of our youths are at risk and we really don't have things in place to assist them, we have to actually do a balancing act between promoting the good things that's happening but rectifying what is wrong.
And I think when we spoke earlier, and looking at the Game Changers program on television, and I'm saying, but why are we focusing on Game Changers as adults? What about Game Changers as youth? All the things that they are doing that are positive. If you give them that opportunity to showcase themselves, so we're taking it out of the stereotype. Look at people who are innovative. Look at young people who've done something in their communities, who've done something in their parishes, and give them an opportunity to showcase themselves. So you change a trend. You change a trend where they feel good about themselves, they feel good about the things they have to say, and we come back to listening. We come back to listening to what they could contribute, because we don't know it all.
No, and we
need to accept that.
Space,
We need to give them that room to be empowered, to be catalysts, to become really the salt of the earth that they're supposed to be, so that they could themselves go out and impact their friends, their schoolmates, their co-workers, because that's what you need to do. You need to develop in them the confidence to really, as the Pope's message said, go forth. And they can't go forth if we're stifling them.
I think a few years ago someone told me there is no room for a shy person in this world anymore. And it's true. When they told me, I stopped and I think for a minute, and it's true. You need to speak up now. You need to have a voice, and being able to have a voice for something good rather than something bad is a very important thing, because a lot of persons now are stepping up and they have voices, but is what they're promoting. And that's the difference. So we need people who have the good morals and the good values to make a stand and let their voices be heard, so that you can push forward a positive change.
You talk about morals and values. Share with viewers, what are some of the key values that underpin your life? There's so many values you could choose from, but if you could choose at least 5 or 3, or share with viewers, what is it that help you to move forward? What is it that you value that's most important to you?
Well, being honest with myself. That is the most important thing, because if you're not honest with yourself, you can't be honest to anybody else. keeping your head forward, keeping that right attitude and that right spiritual mind, because you need to be focused in this society today, because it could be easily misled. Well, that is about it for me.
Great. Stephanie?
I think respect is a big thing, not only for yourself, but for the people around you. Respect is a very important thing. And believe it or not, some sort of fear in God, or fear, because youths now think they're invincible. Really and truly, right about now, you think that you can do anything and no one can tell you what to do, because here's what is my life, I can do what I want. And you see people doing things without even thinking about how would that affect someone, how would that affect me at the end. And I remember some time ago, I saw this young man. Well, I knew him from seeing him around, and he had this big argument with someone, serious, totally angry. And normally when you get angry, you probably start shaking, or you start to breathe heavy because you're angry. And when he finished, he just sat down like normal, like it was his natural state, like it didn't even happen, and I was I looking at him, because he was sitting next to me, and he didn't realize if I didn't see what happened, just as he came to sit down next to me, I wouldn't know that nothing happened, because he came back and he just all right.
Yeah.
And just talking like normal, and well, not to me though, I was just observing, but that's, you didn't, so that fear of something that you would have a consequence after doing something, that is completely gone.
Nice. So fear as well as respect, any other value that you have?
Understanding for self.
Right.
And I mean, it's just a way of life, I could say, and you need to be able to know to make the right choices based on whatever socialization methods have been instilled in you, because we kind of source our behavior based on what we see around us. So that's where role models come in place, that you need to be able to tap into good behavior as far as the people that are around you.
Which is important in terms of the role of the family. And you spoke about the Youth at Risk report. And one of the first things that they spoke about was poor family life. And when I think about family, we of course speak about the immediate family and the extended family in terms of filial relationships. But also, coming back to the Pope message on World Youth Day, he spoke about with the whole church. And you made a point that people do things without whatever the consequences of their action. And that is the role of the adult. And I think in terms of inculcating proper values in youth and protecting youth and children, because the fact of the matter is, youth and children will not have access to the same resources as adults. Adults are the persons who control the resources and share the resources with the youth. So they have an important and a critical role to play in terms of, one, being the role models, like say for instance, as Rodney spoke about with his parents, and providing the support system for you, and also the fear in terms of why you don't want your children to fear you. They must be afraid to come to you with certain things, but they must also know, despite whatever happens, that you can come to me, but they must think twice before they do things that, because that holds many of us in check. Many times, I'll be honest, I pretend to do things when I think about what my mother will say. I said, you see that? Look, let me save myself and save my mother the hurt and the frustration. So sometimes too, you have to, the fact that you think of the whole church and the church being that safeguard for you, and it provides the opportunity for the fellowship and the learning and the respect for each other and the protection of each other. So the family and the role of the adult and the church, I think, is critical there in terms of protecting, advising, and guiding young persons. And even the issue of role models, I know people sometimes have a difficulty with role models because they say, listen, we all fall short of the glory of God at some point in time. But I suppose role of the adult, the mistakes I have made, I can share with you that, okay, this has happened. Because I have used older women in my life who would tell me, they would actually say to you see that? No, you see, be careful of that because of so and so and so. And it has been a useful tool for me as a young person, to avoid certain situations.
It's the generational solidarity. We need to break now for our prayer, and we'll come back to just to wrap up for final thoughts.
Let us pray. O God, open our hearts to the gift of your Holy Spirit as we seek to promote your reign here in Trinidad and Tobago. Help us to become a nation where peace is built with justice and justice is guided by love, love of God and love of neighbor. We ask you, dear God, to guide and bless all our efforts. Inspire us as you did the prophets of old with courage, imagination, and creativity. This we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. We need inspiration, and our youths are full of inspiration these days. So, our final statement to viewers: what are some of the things you want to say to young people who are looking on, and to their parents and family?
Firstly, I'd like to say to youths that not to give up. Just continue, stick with it. If you have something you need to say, don't be afraid to stand up and have a voice. And to parents, be conscious of what you do, because you have persons looking on, and you need to be reminded of that every day. Yeah.
Thank you, Stephanie. Diane?
I want to come back to what our parish priest always tells us. Let your children see you pray. Do not be ashamed to let your children see their father with his hand up in worship. That is going to be so critical. Emulate that. And for the children, youths, I should say, you will defend life at every moment of its development. You will strive with all your strength to make this earth even more livable for people. And I think we need to leave that legacy to give them the confidence to do exactly that.
Yeah. Thank you, Diane. Rodney?
My word to youths is always keep a positive mind, always be confident in anything, and don't be afraid to talk to your parents and ask your parents for advice. They might not be always, how to say, the easiest person to talk to, but go to your parents and try to get advice, if not from your parents, your fellow peers or somebody constructive, to give you the right words or the right confidence, to progress in life.
Thank you, Rodney. Nadine?
As a young person myself, still borderline now. I think it's important to understand why adults have a responsibility towards young persons, that you are responsible for yourself. And despite what situation you may find yourself in, that you have to move forward, and that you are called to serve, you are called to be a disciple. And despite whatever, you are responsible for yourself. You cannot blame anyone in the end.
Yes. And I want to just end also by sharing a little quotation I got from Pope Francis. He says, "We Christians were not chosen by the Lord for little things. Push onwards toward the highest principles. Stake your lives on noble ideals, my dear young people." This was his message to young people. So stake your lives on noble ideals. And as you go up, do as Martin Luther King says, help those bruised and beaten brothers and sisters of ours to a higher, more noble place. Don't move up and forget those who are behind. So often, if you look at the class that were in your class from school, and you've come out, how many of those in your class perhaps are in need, and how many of us look back as we move up in life, as we become more and more affluent? Too often we don't look back to help those who are struggling still. And I want to just say, for the World Youth Day, there was an official prayer that I want to end with, just part of it. O Holy Spirit, love of the Father and of the Son, with the splendor of your truth and the fire of your love, shed your light upon all young people, so that inspired by their experience at World Youth Day, they may bring faith, hope, and charity to the four corners of the earth, becoming great builders of a culture of life and peace, and catalysts of a new world. That culture of life we're called to build, and a culture, the civilization of love. Our Archdiocese has a mission statement, and we're all supposed to be building a civilization of love. Love really is the key. If we love our neighbor and we love God, then we will reach out and we want for our neighbor and for our youths what we want for ourselves. So let's do as Christ asks us to do. Be living, credible witnesses of our faith as we go. So I thank you all for coming. Thank you, our young people, Stephanie and Rodney. It's to you and Nadine. It's to you youths that we look forward to building, being the catalyst of a new world. Thank you, viewers. Good evening, and reflect on how you treat the young people in your families, in your workplaces, and in your communities. And let's do the best that we can to reach out to them. Good night.